I began convening town halls together, first masked in this room and hybrid at the same time, and then moving, of course, completely to Zoom. And together with other members of the FEC, we launched surveys and pressed our administration for higher levels of communication and transparency, and they rose to the occasion. And in many ways, that time seems fuzzy and distant, but I believe it has changed us as a faculty and perhaps prepared us for some of the storms that we're currently experiencing. For many issues we deal with in faculty governance, certain parts of the faculty are deeply engaged. Others weigh in with a question here and there, and they vote when required. But it is the rare circumstance where everyone needs to be deeply engaged, not necessarily in agreement, but engaged. And the pandemic taught us this and taught us that when we are clear on a common outcome, in that case, the welfare of our students, staff, wider community, and ourselves, that this faculty is willing to dig in, to disagree, to make time, to listen, to learn, to try things, and to persevere. Since the pandemic began, we've had to do that over and over. We had to do it regarding the tenure case of Nicole Hannah-Jones. Over 90 units on campus wrote statements affirming the faculty's role in granting tenure and promotion. We had to do it regarding the potential unplanned ousting of our chancellor. And hundreds of faculty members came to an emergency meeting held during the summer months to avert this. And recently, of course, new issues have and are surfacing almost every day. Last week, more than 200 people participated in a faculty town hall. And as of my last look, almost 450 people have signed the letter that a few faculty members put together and began circulating yesterday morning. It has been my privilege and high honor to lead some of these efforts. And in doing so, my goal has not been necessarily to represent your opinions. It's hard to represent the opinions of nearly 4,000 people. Instead, it is to adequately represent the views. Instead, it has been to represent your right to participate in shared governance, your right to academic freedom that has made American higher education the economic powerhouse that it is, and your right to contribute to the public debate in whatever way you see fit without feeling that you will be punished. Now it is time for me to turn over the reins to Beth Morocco, a highly competent and respected faculty member, teacher, scholar, and leader. Over the next 2 months, we'll transition together, and on June 30th, I will step way, way back to let her lead in her own way and with her own voice. And I would ask that you give her a little time to find her sea legs and her own style in this role. I remember being terrified when Lloyd was stepping down. He was patient and calming to everyone, and I was worried that I would not be able to be that person. And of course, I was right to worry. I couldn't be Lloyd, who had the perfect historical reference for every situation. I had to find my own way, and Beth will too, and I'll be cheering her on from afar. I've had lots of help along the way, and I want to say a few thank yous. First, to Helena, Khadijah, and Emma in the Office of Faculty Governance. I don't know whether any faculty chair has ever asked so much of the staff, planning special meetings at the last minute, figuring out technological solutions, getting campus messages out over the weekend or late at night, and they have been unflappable and completely supportive. They have been confidential, and they have been trustworthy and dedicated and highly, highly skilled. So thank you. To the members of the Faculty Executive Committee, both past and present, thank you. Knowing I had you all to talk to every other week, both for advice and direction, gave me confidence. And I always knew that if there was something I wasn't paying attention to, that you would be paying attention to it and would prompt me to take action. The Secretary of the Faculty is an extremely important role, and it takes people with special skills and interests to do the kind of detailed work that the role often demands. I have had the great good fortune to work with two great secretaries who were very dedicated and highly competent. The first was Vince Stepanidis, and for the last 2 years, Jill Moore. First met Jill when I was a PhD student in a law school class. My now husband had spoken to her on the phone before he met her, and having not met her in person, and decided to approach me in class with the following smooth opening line: "Are you Jill?" And over the years, Jill has been a frequent guest lecturer in my MSW classes, and I respect her expertise in health law and her ability to explain health law greatly. During these last 2 years, she has been a tremendous source of good counsel and good cheer, and I'm forever in her debt. The Chancellor and I have walked these roads these last 3 years, sometimes on opposite sides of the fence, but more often in a posture of at least mutual understanding and respect for one another's roles and viewpoints. And I'm grateful for the experience of working with you. But my greatest thanks go to all of you, the faculty of this great university. You have sent me messages of encouragement and affirmation at times when I felt very alone and worried about what the next step should be. You've told me when I've gotten it wrong, and you've helped me learn how to make it right and accepted my apologies for those missteps. These are 3 years that have pushed me and changed me in ways that have made me a better person and a better leader. Thank you. I'm grateful. And with that, we can move on to what is a very full agenda. So, Chancellor.
Does that work? I'm not next. Okay. No worries. I'll turn this off.
It's one of those missteps. We want to take a moment, as we always do, to remember our faculty colleagues who have left us this year. And so let's do that in a moment of silence. What amazing people we've gotten to work with. Beth, I want to welcome you for some remarks.
Thanks, Mimi. I won't speak too long this afternoon. I know that we have a very full agenda. I'm on the agenda committee, and I know I told Jill she could shave some time off of my talk because you will be hearing plenty from me over the next 3 years, I'm sure. First, I'd just like to thank everyone who took the time to vote on our very impressive and long slate of candidates for the different roles on faculty council. Faculty governance, shared governance is more important now than ever, and I appreciate you taking the time to vote. And also, I don't know if Tom's on the Zoom, but I also want to thank my very gracious co-nominee, Tom Kelly. He was a fun person to run with. He was the first person to reach out and offer congratulations and condolences, he said, when the news was announced, and to offer his full support and assistance in any way. And I'm sure that I will be taking him up on that. Thank you, Chancellor Guskowitz and Provost Clemens, for reaching out to me and setting up meetings with me. I look forward to working with you over the next 3 years. And Mimi, I haven't figured out quite the words yet to thank you for all the support and the wonderful legacy that you're leaving for me to step into. I was being a little facetious about the congratulations and condolences, and I don't want to be, for 2 reasons. One is that it's a tremendous honor to serve in this role as faculty chair. And your vote of confidence means the world to me. And I will do my very best to serve well in this role and to make sure that you have a voice. As I mentioned in my remarks, when I was running for faculty chair, I believe in authentic faculty governance. I've been on the faculty council for 3 terms now. There were some terms when it was critical yet more mundane work that we were doing, like what should be on syllabi and salary equity, and very critical work, but more strategic and less reactive. And so we'll see what these 3 years hold for us. But I think that faculty governance is essential to preserve academic freedom and integrity. As faculty, we have unique perspectives. We are interacting with students every day in our classrooms, in our labs, in our offices, and with our peers and colleagues, and really have our fingers on the pulse of what's going on at the university and have an important voice in the future of the university, particularly as we navigate issues of curriculum, accreditation, promotion, inclusivity, free speech, and all the issues that are facing not just us here at UNC. This is higher education nationally are facing these issues, and I think it's a critical time for higher education in our country. So I mentioned when I was running for chair that my priorities will be to protect, continue, and enhance our efforts toward building an inclusive, equitable environment for Carolina's faculty, students, staff, and safeguarding the integrity of the role of faculty in decision-making, and to advocate for full, timely, and transparent information sharing for all matters that concern the faculty. Those are my priorities, but I really want to hear from you, and I want to hear from all voices. I know that we hear a lot from some voices, and it would be very important for us to find opportunities to hear from maybe the voices that we don't hear from as often. I was really struck by how important and helpful it was to have the town hall where we could really delve into issues in more depth than we're usually able to in our 2-hour once a month session. So I've been thinking already about ways to gather more timely, more complete, more in-depth input from faculty. And so please let me know, think about ways that I can connect with you, that we connect with each other. I will be spending the summer learning a lot about this role, transitioning into this role, and I look forward to walking the walk the next 3 years with all of you. So thank you again for your vote of confidence. It means a lot to me, and I look forward to the next 3 years.
Beth, this is a little gift for you. And if you open it real quick, maybe it's something you will pass on to the next faculty chair because I think there are moments that everyone would need it. No. Sorry, I didn't know that it was. It's a little Buddha for moments of Zen. Yeah. Okay. So now it's your turn, Chancellor. Okay. Yeah.
Here we go. Is that working? Great. Well, first of all, Mimi, I want to thank you for your remarks. I want to thank you for your dedicated leadership and partnership in moving our university forward. I know that regardless of the issue, you were always ensuring that our faculty, and I want to say our staff and our students' voices were heard. There were many issues over these past 3 years, and I felt as though I've had a trusted partner in moving the university forward. And so I'm grateful, and I know I speak for many. And I know that you'll be there to support Beth, and I want to congratulate you on your election and look forward to working alongside you. But a big thank you, Mimi, and appreciate all that you've done. And Beth, I think we have a meeting on the books already coming up, so looking forward to that. So as we finish up the semester, I want to also say thank you to you, our faculty. We are grateful for all that you do. I've been out on the road over the past week, 10 days, having an opportunity to talk about the wonderful things that happen here in Chapel Hill, and they could not happen without you, our world-class faculty, and all that you do to in your teaching, your research, and service to the people of North Carolina and beyond. And it's this time of year where I have a chance to talk to students. I'm out at the Old Well. The Carolina Blue Caps and Gowns have shown up and for photographs out at the Old Well, out at the bell tower. And I take an opportunity when I'm there with those students to talk about their favorite class or their favorite professor. And I love hearing the stories and the way in which our faculty are changing the lives of our students and preparing them to be out solving the grand challenges of our time and participating as actively in a thriving democracy. And that starts right here with the incredible work of our faculty. So thank you. And I want to provide a few updates. Part of my travels took me to Washington, D.C., where on Tuesday I had a chance to present alongside other presidents and chancellors at the AAU presidents meeting. And I had the opportunity to talk about our transfer program. I was asked to talk about the way in which Carolina provides access at the best value. As you know, we've been ranked for 20 plus years now as the best value among public institutions, something we're very proud of. And was asked to talk about our C-STEP program, where we have 14 community colleges here in North Carolina that we essentially put resources into those community colleges, preparing those students to transfer to Carolina during their junior year, to start their junior year. And so if they graduate with an associate's degree of arts and have a 3.2 GPA, we guarantee them admission to Carolina. Other university presidents and chancellors are looking for ways to increase accessibility and in an affordable way to great universities like the other 64 that are in the AAU. And so it was a real treat to talk about that at the AAU meeting. And this fall, and I just sent a campus message out, it's probably coming into your boxes at some point during this meeting, but we'll be admitting the largest group of transfer students in the history of the university with over 1,000 transfer students this coming fall. And many of them come from our community colleges, and especially those 14 C-STEP community colleges. So thank you for all that you do to support them on their journeys once they reach Carolina. We also had the opportunity at the AAU President's meeting to talk about issues around intellectual property and protecting intellectual property, issues around cybersecurity that are hitting many universities as we think about being able to recruit and retain the best faculty and graduate students from around the globe. But there are issues around cybersecurity and protecting intellectual property that are important, and we're putting additional measures in place here, and we have been over the past several years to ensure that we can do that. We also talked at this AAU meeting about issues around diversity, equity, and inclusion, something that's in the news, it seems like every day, every other day, and talking with leaders in Texas and Missouri and California and Kansas about some of the difficulties and challenges that they're facing. But it's important to remember that many institutions around the country are dealing with some of the same challenges that we're beginning to talk about here locally. While I was in DC, I also had the opportunity to visit Capitol Hill and to talk with North Carolina members of Congress. And I want you to know that they love this great university. They love the work that you, our faculty, are doing every day to solve big problems and prepare the next generation of leaders. And I had a chance to talk with them about the excellence that takes place here at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. They sit on important committees, and I stress the importance of continuing to support funding for NIH, for NSF, for the National Endowment for the Humanities, and more, because that is what supports a lot of the great work that happens here across the campus. Second point I want to talk about is that I know that there are many many of our faculty who are concerned about a bill that has been introduced in the North Carolina General Assembly that proposes to eliminate tenure for faculty within the UNC system. And I had conversations just this week at the Board of Governors meetings with several other chancellors that likewise are concerned about this. But what I want you to know is that we've had bills like this introduced in the past. And what we've learned is that it's critical to continue to educate members of the General Assembly about why tenure is so important. And especially at a leading global public research university like the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Eliminating tenure would be disastrous to our universities and our efforts to retain and recruit the world-class faculty that we enjoy here at Chapel Hill. And it would be, in my opinion, disastrous for the state of North Carolina. And so it'll be important for leaders across the system to continue to work alongside our General Assembly members, who I know also love the UNC system, the institutions, and the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Provost Clemens and I had an opportunity to visit about 3 weeks ago. We were in Raleigh visiting with members of the General Assembly, advocating for this great university, for the funding that's needed to keep our programs moving forward, to keep our buildings up to par what they should be, because this is an old campus, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But I do want you to know that I know they believe in you, and they believe in the University of North Carolina. And so let's just continue to work to educate them and work closely with the system office on these issues. Third, we are continuing our work on critical issues around accessibility, especially accessibility issues with our students. I'm looking forward to our discussion later in the meeting on this topic. As I see Eleanor has joined us, thank you. And she's been an incredible advocate for these important issues alongside many others on our campus. Our campus is an old campus. We're approaching 230 years. On October the 12th will be our 230th birthday. And so it's an old campus, and we have a lot to fix and to keep these buildings accessible to everyone. And we're committed to this. And I know that our teams are working very hard. I want to acknowledge Christy Hurt, who is also in the room, my chief of staff, who's been coordinating a lot of these efforts alongside members of our leadership team in facilities and campus operations and student affairs and other units on campus that I know are passionate about this. As I mentioned at our last meeting, one of the things that we can do right now is to make sure that our faculty are working closely with student affairs and with ARS whenever there are accommodation needs that are requested by a student and by that office. And we need to start in our classrooms where the most important work takes place. And we have a lot to do, but I will continue to work with facilities on equipment and other needs for residential halls. And but this is a top priority for us. Finally, as we finish out the spring semester, I hope that you'll take the opportunity to join us at the hooding ceremony on May the 13th and commencement on May the 14th, where our speaker will be Brian Stevenson, who leads and directs the Equal Justice Initiative in Montgomery, Alabama. I talked a little about this at the last meeting, but if you ever have a chance to get to Montgomery, Alabama, to the Equal Justice Initiative, it's incredible, and you'll, I'm sure, hear Brian Stevenson talk about that at Keenan Stadium. I think it's 10 a.m. on May the 14th. So thank you again for all you do. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Provost Clemens, and then we'll take questions. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Oh, thank you, Kevin. I'm glad to be here. And as I say every time I address you, the work that this body does is vitally important. And that is true now more than ever. There are tangible challenges to the university that we must face together. You as our faculty's representative body, me as the chief academic officer, and all of us as colleagues committed to this university. We are called to speak up for the work of this faculty and to protect the rights and prerogatives that are essential to our mission. As I've said from the very beginning, I think of myself as a professor first and faculty member, and an ardent defender of the idea that any university worth the name has to be led by the faculty. I have only a few brief items. I'll get us a little ahead of schedule today. I want to start by thanking the outgoing chair of the faculty, Mimi Chapman. Mimi has been, and I imagine will continue to be, a powerful voice for our academic community. Although we haven't always taken the same approach to promoting the university and its faculty, I know that we share the same core commitments to this university, to one another, and to our students in our state. Mimi has been an advocate for this body and for our community and represented the faculty with courage and grace. So thank you very much for your service. As we transition to new leadership, I want to say I'm excited to work with you, Beth. We'll be meeting next week to think about the next year and the challenges and opportunities we'll face together. I look forward to hearing your strategies for what I think you said is to protect, defend, and enhance our mission and our culture of belonging. And so I look forward to doing that. We will need a strong relationship and a coordinated approach between faculty and administrative leadership to meet the challenges that we will continue to face. And I know you are going to be a great voice for the faculty and for our university. You will take the helm of this body at a time when we can work together, I believe, to make an audacious case for the university. We need leadership that is judicious and savvy about the political context and how we engage with our stakeholders. This is a task, I believe, that starts with empowering our faculty and our faculty leaders to govern, to lead, and to grow. With talk about the elimination of tenure in the air, we'll need to respond, as Kevin says, by educating and advocating and making the case that a long-term investment in our faculty is also an investment in our state's health, its economic prosperity, and even its basic freedoms. I also want to note, as we think about that investment, we have to recognize that it should include an investment in all of our faculty. We have 4,174, according to the Office of Institutional Research, 4,174 faculty, and more than half are not tenured or on the tenure track. And when those of us who enjoy the privileges of tenure are troubled by the actions contemplated by the General Assembly, we should also remember the disparities in our own ranks and the precarity many of our faculty experience in their daily life and work. You've already heard about our Provost Distinguished Faculty Leaders Program, and the deadline is coming next week, so pay attention to that, and hopefully you have either nominated someone or you yourself applied. Well, I've also asked Giselle Corby, LaShania Thompson, Amy Locklear-Hertel, Aaron Malloy, and the whole faculty affairs team to help us develop a leave program for term faculty so that we can enhance the professional development of those term faculty, and we hope that we'll be able to announce something in the fall semester. Let me take that moment to welcome back Amy Locklear-Hertel, who is here. Welcome her back to this meeting and to our office as she returns from parental leave. We have missed you, and the whole office feels whole again with you present. Thank you. And no one is happier than me to see you return. I will end with just one small item that comes from me and our Chief Information Officer. The summer would be a great time to migrate your course materials from Sakai to Canvas. There are links and instructions on Sakai, and we discussed this in an earlier meeting. And if you're like me, you'll panic on the eve of classes when you realize you can't make Sakai come up as you always have. I'm setting a reminder. I'm not teaching in the fall, but I'll just do it because if I wait too long, I won't even know how to do it. So just to the faculty, set a reminder sometime in the summer when hopefully things slow down a little. Start moving those courses, especially if you're teaching one in the fall, and get it set up in Canvas. So I'll stop there, and Chancellor and I can take questions. Thank you.
Questions? Jan.
Yeah, Hanik, Statistics and Operations Research. You mentioned the bill that was introduced about tenure. There are several other bills that might be even more worrying because I heard that this one might not go very far, but the other ones might. And that's the introduction of a mandatory course with a syllabus written by the legislature. And the other one would mess with our accreditation by going by the Florida model where you have to change accreditor every 10 years. How are we responding to that? Because those are also very disruptive bills.
So let me touch on the accreditation one, and I'll let the provost talk about the course. That would be a major concern problem. Just look at what's happened in Florida. There are issues with being able to transition to another credible accreditor, and there are a lot of downstream issues that come with that, such as Pell Grant. Student aid, federally funded. Agencies that I mentioned earlier in my remarks around the NIH, the NEH, DOD, you have to be an accredited institution in order to be eligible for federal funding in all of those lanes. And there's probably another dozen that I could touch on. And so our partner and peer institutions down in Florida are really struggling with this. And I think there's some sense that that's going to be pulled back and that they're probably going to still end up perhaps being able to use SAC COC. So I hope that, again, we will need to continue to advocate. I know that the system office and President Hans is likewise looking closely at this, and it's about educating our General Assembly members about some of the downstream effects of that potential change.
Right, thanks. I'll just add to that in case anybody missed the memo. You know, the precipitating event was a kind of public, I mean, the media attempted to make it into a dust up. It was essentially standard operating procedure to inquire about something that appeared in the media. Kevin worked with Lynn and myself to issue a response. Within a day of receiving the response, we got the clear. So we have a very productive and healthy relationship with our accreditor. And it is very difficult, and I think it would be very difficult to rebuild not just the relationship, but the reporting wouldn't be the same. Lynn just finished an enormous amount of work to do our 5-year check-in with SAC COC. And so these are not, I think, constructive bills. And I have communicated that to the few legislators that I have the chance to talk to. On the other one, I inquired about it in a meeting with a couple of folks in the Senate, and they were lighthearted about it, calling it the Overreach Act. I think it's called the Reach Act. And so it's not clear that both chambers are aligned on some of this, but they said to me they thought it was essentially not really relevant to this institution because they assumed everyone would have AP credit for this. Well, I looked into it, and that's not true. We would have quite a record keeping and really process of making sure it would add another layer like the old swim test to what you have to do to graduate. And I think it would be forgetting about the philosophical problems with it, it would be an administrative nightmare and not really add anything to our curriculum. I'm sure we teach everything that's in that prescribed curriculum. But the bigger problem is it reaches into a place where we have declared, and I think consistently said, it is not appropriate. The faculty determine the curriculum of the university. To impose a curriculum, even in a sketchy format that stipulates readings for a particular class, might be appropriate for high school. But it is not appropriate for higher ed. And I think it begins to erode what we think of higher ed as for and what it is that we do. And so I've been communicating that consistently to folks. And I think I can't give you a read on where people are because I just don't have that many connections to folks who can tell me that. But I think we're doing what we can do to communicate how we see, again, to reiterate what higher ed is for, why we have a faculty, why our faculty are the ones we trust to make curriculum for the university. And so I think we may make some progress there. Again, these bills appear, they're in a political context. Sometimes they're a message. Sometimes it's a message meant for constituents back home. Sometimes it's a message we should try to read and respond to. We are making those responses. But we don't have to say anything new to do that. We just have to reiterate 230 years of established practice around higher ed and what we do. So I'm pretty confident that we'll get through with minimal change, but I don't think we should be complacent.
We have Rich has had his hand up on Zoom, so let's go to him first. Back to the room.
Hi, can you hear me? Hi, Kevin. Hi, Chris.
Rich,
Coming through okay?
you're good.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to, yeah, we attended a really excellent town hall that Mimi ran, I forget, 10 days ago, something like that. And really interesting to listen to different legal perspectives about these DEI, new regulations that are coming out of Board of Trustees and Board of Governors. And one of the things that I'm worried about and wanted to get both of your takes on is, like, downstream of these new regulations, what kind of things are we at some risk of some of the diversity enhancing programs that we have here at Carolina that have been very successful coming under attack?
Yeah, so thanks, Rich. We're looking closely at that. Provost has been clear with the deans that right now this is about, if you're talking about the compelled speech policy, this is around the hiring of employees at the university and around recruitment of students in terms of what is in application materials and what's being asked in those questions. So they're looking closely at that. We are still remaining we are committed, as we always have been, to diversifying our faculty, staff, and student body. I talked about this at the AAU meeting as well. And so we're looking closely at that. There are some certainly legacy programs and initiatives that have been in place that we're looking closly at, but right now we're not changing any of those at this point in time. I don't know if you want to add anything to.
No, I think we're mostly through. Let's recall where things come from. The compelled speech was a Board of Governors, not a legislative act. What we've received from the legislature is a request for information.
Inventory.
Yeah, and so we don't actually know that has worked its way into any legislation that we could address. But if it does, we'll be ready to address it. And we have great legislative affairs to help us do that. So when I say I speak to people, it's really Amy McConkey and her team that are over there every day, and we communicate through them. But we do occasionally get to have face-to-face, and so we will watch for that and we will respond. Right now, there's nothing before the legislature to respond to that I'm aware of.
No,
I could have missed something. Yeah.
Thanks.
Harry.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mimi, Chancellor and Provost Clements. This is really a question for the Chancellor and the Provost. As we all know, and as we've been discussing today, 2 months ago, this body passed a resolution disapproving of the School of Civic Life and Leadership. And yet, we read in the press this week that Provost Clemens submitted a request for $5 million to fund the school that we as faculty have rejected, at least under present circumstances, and those haven't changed. So the legislature passed it. They appropriated $4 million instead of 5. That meant that the legislature is mandating that we spend this money on the purpose it's laid out. That is a direct interference in our curriculum decisions and our independence as faculty. So I'm curious to know why you all made that request in the face of our clear mandate not to, and what are going to be the consequences for this political interference in our decision-making authority going down the road. Essentially, that has wiped our authority away with the stroke of a pen. It'll never be possible again for us to say, oh, but we've never done this before. So I wish you'd address more directly than I've seen you do so far to try to address those.
So first, I just want to say that there has been no money appropriated for a school. There is a line item in the House's budget for this. There will be a lot of negotiation back and forth. We haven't seen the Senate's budget yet, and at some point there may be money that is appropriated for this. We have said over and over that we have a goal of building out and expanding curriculum around the public discourse, the program for public discourse. And I have said before this body, I've said it in campus messages, that the faculty and our leadership in the school will determine what that ultimately looks like. There's already a committee working within the college under Jim White and Elizabeth Englehart's leadership on that with a number of department chairs. I met with them 2 weeks ago, and I think they're making great progress. And as we talked about at the last faculty meeting, beginning to pull together a group of individuals that would help us look beyond that, how to handle the calm beyond requirement in the general education curriculum and bridging it with the program for public discourse and what that might ultimately look like. So there has been no money that is guaranteed to be sent to Chapel Hill for a new school or a curriculum for around the program for public discourse to this point.
Yes, but nevertheless, you all requested $5 million in the face of, according to the News and Observer, in the face of our request, essentially, that you not do that.
Yeah, so look, can I take that? And I know you're a historian, and so I want to line the facts up and do this in historical order as well. We have not made any formal request to the legislature for anything. So let me back up. I did go through this with the FEC. You may not have been there or seen that session. And so I think it's important to reiterate it because I have nothing to hide or be ashamed of here. I want to describe exactly what happened. Last fall, there was a discussion around what the program for public discourse could do in a curricular sense. And I met with a small handful of faculty when it was time to put forth our budget request to the system office. Those budget requests were essentially written, but I developed a proposal for skill with a small number of faculty input and wrote it up as a small 2-page budget request that we might submit. I gave it to Kevin, I gave it to Nate. Kevin said, we're not ready to submit this. I agreed because the proposal was to take it to a larger group of faculty and discuss their aspirations to do this. So I want to be very clear that we have not heard from everyone. There are faculty with aspirations to do this. We will be forming a committee both with those faculty and other faculty to discuss those aspirations. It was me who captured them in a document, and it was me who made the phrase skill and called it the School of Civic Life and Leadership. That was not imposed by anyone. As a member of the faculty, I wrote a white paper and I floated it to Kevin and Nate. It was not submitted. I also shared it with a few more people, including some trustees. From there, in their enthusiasm for it, against my request that they do nothing, they put forward the resolution you know about. So what gets stated incorrectly in the media record is that the trustees initiated this. I initiated this on behalf of faculty. The trustees attempted to move it forward against my advice and without my knowledge at the time, and without Kevin's knowledge, or without indeed some of the trustees' knowledge, because it was introduced on the morning of the meeting. The legislature have seen that white paper undoubtedly, and it did have a request that we did not submit in it. So if they choose to do something in their budget, it is not because we have made a direct request. Nonetheless, you see what's happening again in this political context. In states like ours, legislatures are interested in efforts such as this, and I think we have a choice. We can build one that our faculty initiated and want to build out. And in fact, the bill that's there, or the language that's in the House budget now, is inviting the chancellor and the faculty to build the program. Or we can have bills introduced that attempt to do things that overreach. I would much rather that we own some of the questions and problems, as our faculty want to do, and that we build it out according to the way we do things. I do not want to violate any part of the process. And I think once we get a little further in with a group of faculty, just as this body recommended, as with data science, the faculty need to study this. We will charge a committee. Kevin has asked me to start getting names together. I will not be the only person choosing the committee. The committee will study it, and we will decide what to move forward. So that's a completely, I hope, will be a completely transparent process. We'll work with the FEC. As to the other resolution, we talked about this at the last meeting, and I went back and read the language, and it said that that the faculty would not support it until a proposal came from the faculty, and I support that. I think you will see a proposal from the faculty.
You have said over and over that the faculty has requested this, but the faculty council is the official voice of the faculty, and we have spoken loud and clear against this idea that's being floated. So I just want to say on the record that your declaration that the faculty of the university has made this request is not accurate.
Well, let me say, I'll amend my words to say some faculty, but they have not made a formal request about anything. There are faculty interested to do this. There have been since we started an initiative in 2018. There are other programs on campus, medieval and modern studies, sexuality studies. I have looked through the history of how these were formed. They almost always start with a small group of faculty who are interested, who then put together proposals to bring before a larger group. I don't know how else to do it. When we did data science, it began with people interested in data science and was brought as a fulsome proposal to this faculty. We do not have such a proposal now. I agree with you. But if you have a better process for this, if you believe the way we start new things is we bring them first to this body, and this body adjudicates on whether we're even going to allow faculty to start initiatives, I'm happy to entertain such an idea. But I do not think this body, in its shared governance role, actually believes that the right way to proceed is to give groups of faculty interested in an initiative permission before they can do something that they want to do. As the provost, I support the right of groups of faculty to promote new initiatives and bring them to this body. Where we got out of order is the Board of Trustees endorsed something that hadn't even been described fully. And I think we have to back up and let the faculty build that description together. And when I say the faculty, initially in a group of people who are interested or maybe even critical, and to put something together and bring it here.
I think-
Which part of that is inappropriate?
Yeah, I think I'd like to intervene if I could, because we
Sure.
do have a
Sorry, I didn't mean to go on. I just think it's important for history to get the record straight, and I may not always use my words perfectly, and I'm sorry if I implied the whole faculty are interested in this. The whole faculty haven't seen a fulsome proposal even to think about. They've seen a white.
I think there are a couple of, what I think is a little bit troublesome with this is nobody else knows who these other faculty are, and they haven't through all of these months since this started in January. And so I'm not asking you to describe who they are or not, because we really do need to go on, but that's part of the, so there's some amorphous group that supposedly is interested in this, and I don't doubt that that exists, but there's no website for the there's no, but no one knows who those people are. No one has ever, I mean, still to this day, and it's now been since January, no one has ever written to me and said, Mimi, I'm dying to do this. I think this is a great idea. And again, I don't doubt that those people exist, but it is just interesting that you don't hear from them. So I think that's part of the problem, but I really do need to
No,
cut
thank
this.
you. And
yeah.
I'm just going to ask if we can have patience. We will not have a meeting for a while. When we come back in the fall, I think it will be clear who's interested, who's not, if we can get this committee formed and do some initial work.
Okay, Allison has had her hand up, so let's take Allison's question, and then we have.
Thank you. My question builds off of, this is Allison Schlabbaum from the business school. I just want to call out again the small number of faculty that you've been referencing. That seems like that's important in the sense that it is faculty driven, but unimportant in the sense that they don't represent all faculty. And I think that's why this is such a critical point. You all also mentioned earlier in your talks about advocacy and education, and you seem encouraging of us to use our voices. I think what can be challenging is in an institution that sometimes feels opaque, and that it's who you know and whether or not you're proximate to power that allows your voice to matter, that can become very damaging for a culture. Businesses don't like it. We shouldn't be supportive of that opaque culture of power either. And so as we move forward, taking into context the precarity you mentioned of term faculty, the potential precarity of other faculty, I just think transparency would be really important in these conversations, especially if we hope to build trust.
Allison, we will hear it loud and clear. And as
Okay.
we said, we need to, I know you want to move on. I want to say that there are several other universities around the country that are doing this, that they are rushing to be first to try to do this. And I mean, I had this conversation at the AAU meeting this week. And I'm not saying that we should rush to be first either. I'm just saying that they're going to evolve at other institutions in different ways. I've said repeatedly, the faculty will be involved. We will prepare a committee list of those that are interested in this, that bring content expertise to this, and then it will eventually be brought to this body. I think, as Chris has already said, this is how many curricula have evolved and been developed over the past decade or longer here at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. And so that will not change.
So
Okay.
how would you say is the
All right.
best way to advocate?
Allison, I'm
this?
sorry,
No, that's
I have to move on.
Okay.
All right. Next on our agenda is Link Butler giving us an update on the Salary Equity Committee that was the Chancellor charged last year.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. It's good to be here. I want to give you a quick, given that time is short and the agenda is long, a quick update of the work that we've been doing in the Faculty Salary Equity Advisory Committee. We were charged in October by the Chancellor and the Provost to begin taking a look at a lot of different things. One of the things that we're looking at is the work that's been done thus far on salary equity analysis. We're also we've met in December and we met in February, and we covered things like looking at our current policies and procedures around how faculty salaries are set. We had members of my team join us at our February meeting to walk through all of the salary administration guidelines that we have to adhere to that are not only local policies here at the university, but when actions also have to go to the system office and get Board of Governors or President approval. And a large part of that is we wanted to make sure that everybody on the committee understood the policies that we are having to operate under and the system that we have to operate under. So we all have sort of a level playing field. We also made sure that the members of the committee were all aware of the work that had been done previously. The Committee on the Status of Women, for example, they had provided a report to this body. I wanted to make sure that everybody on the committee was familiar with that work and up to speed on it. And also Lynn Williford from the Office of Institutional Research and Assessment We had her go over some of the work that their office does around salary equity analyses and that sort of thing. Our next meeting is actually Monday, and we're going to be meeting with an external expert that has been doing some assessment of the work that Lynn and her team have been doing, and we're inviting them to come join the committee and talk about some of the work that they're going to do as well. What we're looking at moving into our future meetings is to then start to look at the policy specific to each of the schools and the college. As many of you are probably no doubt familiar, every school has their own policies and their own ways about addressing things like compensation. And so I think it's really important for this committee to dive into those policies, take a good look at them, and maybe develop some recommendations about how we could create some more consistency about how those policies are carried out. This is a robust group. They ask great questions. We have great discussion. And it's been a pleasure to work with them. And I realize that I just feel like I've flown through some of the things that we've been doing over the last few months, but I'm really excited about what we are going to be doing, not only on Monday to get more informed about that analysis that our external experts are doing, but also about diving into these policies and really taking a deep, deep dive into them. So with that being said, that's kind of a highlight. I hopefully save some time for some of the other presenters, but certainly be happy to take any questions if that's appropriate.
So do we have questions for Link? And I just want to sort of reiterate, we ask for a yearly update on the work of this committee. And so that's why we wanted to make sure that Link was on the agenda and the committee, and the chair, and one of our faculty representatives who's been very instrumental in this, Misha Becker, has been on leave for this semester. So we are
still engaged. I mean, she's
Yes.
definitely been participating in the meetings.
Right. So we'll continue with this. Jan?
I have a data question. So what kind of data does the committee have available beyond to what's publicly available, which is all our salaries that you can down?
So we're working with Lynn Wilford and her team, who have access virtually to all the personnel data available within our systems. And so she's been pretty instrumental in making sure that we have, and once we start taking the deeper dive into the policies and also in some of the analyses that they're doing, this committee will be able to take a look at that data as well. So, obviously we want to make sure that we're doing as much as we can to protect individuals and looking at the data at a very high level as much as we can, but also diving as much as we can into discipline, that sort of thing. So. Other questions?
Any other questions? Questions online?
One other thing just to add, I'm sorry, just remembered, as part of our communications plan, in addition to coming here regularly and providing updates, we are looking to develop a website where we can just keep everybody up to date, easily accessible about the work of the committee and what we're doing. So more to come on that. We don't have that constructed yet, but it's coming.
Thank you very much. Great.
All right, thank you.
Really appreciate it.
So throughout the year, we've had a number of conversations, both within the executive committee and in the agenda committee, other places, wanting to understand more about the experiences of our students with disabilities on our campus. And so we are very happy to have representatives from Tar Heels at the table with us today to tell us a little bit about the work of their group and also how they are perceiving their needs on campus. Eleanor Bolton is a student and the chair of the group, and we have Christine Mendoza, and also with us is Simon Bloor from ARS. So please, welcome. What's the best for you? Yeah. Oh, okay. And do you want a microphone? Yeah. Okay. You have multiple. Oh, cool. Yeah. Okay.
Maybe.
We can also pass the microphone.
Yeah, I can also. Yeah, or if you want to just flip it to your. You like
Yeah.
double there.
I'm not used to it.
Okay. You
Yeah,
want
we
to
can
just pass it?
definitely share. You can hold it. That's totally fine. Well, thank you all so much for having us. I'm so honored and excited to be here. And thank you for the warm introduction. My name is Eleanor Bolton. I'm a sophomore here at UNC studying political science and public policy. And I'm the president of Tar Heels at the Table, which is an interpersonal advocacy group for disabled students. And then I'm also the co-chair of the Disability Advocates Committee housed in the campus-wide Center for Social Justice. And I'll pass it to Christine.
Yeah, and I'd like to reiterate Eleanor's thanks to you all for listening to us here. My name is Christine Mendoza, and I'm a junior, double majoring in computer science and nutrition. And I'm kind of the secretary and treasurer of Tar Heels at the Table.
So we're going to present to you guys some slides to give you a general understanding of our lived experience as disabled students on campus. But we hope you feel free to ask questions as we go. And then also if you just have comments to make about how we could also serve as helpful liaisons to disabled faculty as well. That's really important to us too. So I don't know if you want to start with our next slide. Okay. No, that's good. Do you want to start with this one?
So just a brief blurb about Tar Heels at the Table. It's basically a group that exists to create awareness on accessibility, inclusion, and disability on UNC. And we, I guess, serve as an advisory committee to a number of people. And the experiences we're going to talk about today kind of come from a variety of sources because we wanted to make sure that we included a wide variety of students. And so a lot of sources are written in verbal communications with other students and staff with disabilities. Me being the computer science student I am, I've decided to scrape our UNC subreddit for some unstructured online forum data, and also put out an informal survey. This is actually from 1.5 years ago, but it's still relevant in some points concerning experiences of inaccessibility. So here's a word cloud made from the subreddit comment data. As you can see, there are some terms that you would expect, like accommodations, accessibility. Some things that stood out to me was how often students were mentioned, which I think kind of emphasizes the centrality of students, as well as the importance of staff in this university, as well as research and health and time. I think the interesting thing about research being mentioned is that it sort of highlights that we are a research university. And so there is a good amount of opportunity to address some of these things through research and other initiatives. And so very briefly, the informal survey, I guess, results sent out. I guess I can't really speak much to the numbers of this data since it was a very informal survey, but it can indicate that there pretty much is an agreement that there is a problem with accessibility of certain class materials, classwork, as well as physical spaces. And these respondents, I think, kind of saw more issues with physical spaces, possibly because that is pretty visual compared to classroom materials. So now I'm going to hand it over to Eleanor to talk about themes, and then we're going to go into quotes.
Perfect. Thank you. So I wanted to touch a little bit about what an inequitable education experience looks like and what it feels like to disabled students like us. So starting from the academic lens, and I think this is probably most pertinent to this body, is when students walk into a classroom and they know that they have accommodations through ARS, how are those accommodations implemented in a meaningful way? And the answer at Carolina is that they're not. As you guys know, I'm sure it's so difficult to implement, hundreds of accommodations in every single classroom for every student all the time. And then also, I think Simon could probably speak to this later, but I'm sure you guys know that faculty doesn't receive training on those, or at least required training for what it looks like to implement an accommodation in a meaningful way. So how are we navigating a space with disabled students who got into this university, are trying to get an equitable education, just to be told that it's not going to be possible with the content of the course? It's really frustrating, and it makes students kind of feel isolated in a way. This is like the most common grievance we have at Tar Heels at the Table and in DAC is like accommodations are not being met for students who really, really need them. And so I think coming in here, we really wanted to communicate like how harmful that is to disabled students here. And we're going to talk about some action points later on, but there are some really exciting things coming up that like hopefully will make that environment more of a cohesive and collaborative environment rather than it all of the burden being placed on faculty to meet those accommodations. And kind of we're hoping to discuss more of like the intersectionality of accommodations later, and also like how you can accommodate things for different students who may have different needs. So, but that is like the most universal experience at Carolina, unfortunately, for disabled students. And it's really harmful to your ability to succeed in this environment, as well as your ability to fit in and thrive. So that's difficult. And then also, we wanted to talk a little bit about extracurriculars as well as emotional inclusivity. This is something we talked a little bit about recently, just like in conversations as the end of the school year comes up, because in extracurriculars, a lot of events held by faculty, students, staff are inaccessible. So just to give a couple of quick examples, one of my friends is involved in like the Parr Center for Ethics, and she was presenting her findings, was doing a really impactful presentation that I wanted to be a part of and support her in, but I couldn't go because it wasn't in an accessible environment. So thinking about the ways in which faculty, if you're an advisor for extracurriculars, kind of bring up these conversations of accessibility. You know, when you hold an event, is it accessible? Does it have push buttons? What does the environment of the room look like? Does someone need a companion mic? Are we talking about that? These are really basic premises that we could all be using in our daily conversations. And then the emotional inclusivity at Carolina is probably one of the hardest things to do. So our, I guess, traditional values at Carolina, and since we are such an old institution, so much of the things that make Carolina Carolina are inherently inaccessible. So just a couple of days ago, seniors participated in the bell tower climb. There was no accommodation for students who couldn't go up the stairs. And that's like just simply not thought about in any regard. Like no one even mentioned it. No one even said, like, we actually approached, we were like, what do you do if you're a disabled student? Because there are some disabled students in Tar Heels at the Table who are seniors. And the answer is like, oh, didn't even think about that. Didn't even cross anyone's mind. And I feel like as the faculty governance, you all really have, are in a unique position where you can kind of be challenging your students in a way to be thinking about these things and what does it mean to include your peers. And like these are really powerful discussions that we could have because just in a classroom environment, it's probably one of the only times you're able to get students to listen on a regular basis. So just encouraging your students as well to think about what meaningful inclusion means to them and what it looks like for their peers. I think is a really powerful tool. We were just talking about this and how it, like, disabled students and disabled peers really challenge us all to interrogate the ways in which we move through space and place. And it kind of, I don't know, inspires innovation in everyone. So it only benefits a classroom. So those are the ways in which I think I touched on all of the themes. If you want to go to the next slide and talk about some of the quotes.
Sure. So as Eleanor said, we're going to share some quotes. So the first quote is actually a pretty long quote, but kind of the gist of it is that this person suffers from hearing loss and auditory processing disorder and was not able to get the accommodations that they requested ahead of time for captions. During the time that there was COVID, masks also made it hard to lip read, and there was no availability of clear masks. And so this person says that on the first day of class, they cried silently through the second half because they felt so ashamed and stupid for not being able to understand. And they immediately felt that they did not belong here. A different respondent apparently, unfortunately, has not had good experiences in their classes either. And we're told that it would be better to drop their class rather than take it remotely. In terms of physical accessibility, one respondent talked about how it can be very time consuming and inconvenient to find accessible paths to class. I've personally been involved in, I guess, on one hand, not being able to get to class or eventually getting to class after about 30 minutes of wandering around and trying to find a specific door, or well, actually, I guess last fall I took an algorithms class where the class was theoretically accessible. However, there were steps which were preventing me from going to the front of the room, which meant that whenever people would do an activity at the front or we would kind of ask questions, I was not able to see, and I was also not able to get in line to ask questions. And so the other respondent actually talks about a proposal idea because this survey was sent out along with 6 proposals on improving accessibility. And so one thing that I am actually leading or that I've been spearheading since around November of 2021 is the formation of an accessible navigation app that will not only help students to find accessible paths to classes because sometimes you do have to like go around the building, or other times actually this semester my teacher had to request that an accessible door be open to Murray. There's an auditorium because normally it is locked, but again, that was another classroom that was inaccessible. And it's also in order to help faculty be able to better plan where events and I guess your assigned classes, but where events can be held, as well as for people to be aware of which people can be affected by an elevator breaking. And I really loved this quote by this respondent because it kind of summarizes the essence of when a university or any organization is not built with people in mind, those people will be excluded and it makes it difficult to participate fully in campus. So I'm going to hand it back over to Eleanor to talk about some current activities that we and others are working on.
Thank you. Okay, so as you guys heard, Christy has been a really excellent advocate in this space and has been able to assemble a team of people who have been helping us bring up these really convoluted conversations around ADA access and what that looks like in a historically misrepresented community such as Chapel Hill. So we are updating accessibility classrooms and lab spaces. If you are a science professor, like please look at if your lab space is equipped to handle people with physical, mental, emotional disabilities. That's really important. And a lot of research that we do at this university, we are a research university, but a lot of it in the physical sciences is not accessible. So I would really encourage you all to go back to your labs and think about, is my lab accessible? If yes, let ARS know, because I'm sure they would love to publish that to make that opportunity available to students, because oftentimes disabled students don't even reach out because it's so painful to like constantly be told things are not available to you. So thinking about that would be really helpful to us. And then we're also in the process of creating and implementing an accessibility strategic plan. So we're hoping an accessibility assessment should be created and completed with a database of the deficits that is required and has been required by the ADA almost 35 years ago, but it doesn't seem to be updated or utilized at Carolina as far as we can tell by public record. So we're looking for an accessibility assessment and an audit of the entirety of the university to be completed within a reasonable amount of time. And then once that is published, hopefully with the deficits, how can we as faculty and students kind of look at the spaces that you operate in with like your offices, your classrooms, the buildings that you're in. I know like as a political science student, I couldn't go to office hours all last semester because Hamilton elevators were broken. So if you're aware like, oh, an elevator is broken in my specific building, maybe sending out an email to all of your students and saying, hey, if this is a barrier for you, I'm willing to meet on Zoom. things like that make such a big difference to our feelings of inclusion here. And then this is so exciting, and maybe Simon can speak a little bit more to this later too, but ARS and the Office of Equal Compliance is working on a disability training for faculty and staff. So you all will be able to participate in this hopefully by August, is what I was told. And it will be not required initially, as far as I understand, with the piloting of it, but I would encourage you all to sign up to take that training, because it looks to be very comprehensive. Not only like the history of the Americans with Disabilities Act, but then like why and how it can be implemented in classrooms, as well as some really accelerant models like Berkeley, who has over 800 wheelchair users. Things like that are really interesting to think about. And then I'll pass it back to Christine to talk about her work on the app.
Yeah, so really briefly, the Accessible Navigation app is pretty much you could say, a collaborative research effort spanning, I guess, the computer science department, as well as stakeholders from around the university, ARS, EOC, and some people, I guess, that I've run into who have been really helpful in giving advice on accessibility. And we're hoping actually that this app will be able to, I guess, also notify people when elevators are down, because it will be a primarily crowdsourced app. And so actually, as we get into how you guys can help, there'll be a little bit about that. I'll pass it back to Eleanor briefly for the first part of areas for support.
Yeah, so like I said, we're hoping to see everyone and all of the faculty that we could possibly get participate in the accessibility training, and like look at the ways in which you can implement accommodations. If you have questions, ask questions. I think ARS is a really great resource for implementing accommodations in a meaningful way. And even if like a student maybe doesn't have accommodations, but talking about the ways in which classroom environments could be more accessible is also really important. So we're hoping to see everyone participate in that in August.
And as the Accessible Navigation app is built out in collaboration actually with App Team Carolina also, which is consists of some students in the computer science department, but also in the School of Public Health. We're probably going to be asking this fall for all of your departments' help in contributing data. It'll be open data. So I guess for outdoor data, it'll be on OpenStreetMaps, which is a crowdsourced mapping solution kind of that is used pretty globally. For indoor buildings, we know that we want to keep our campus secure, so that'll be onion protected data. But given that there is a lot of relevant information in buildings, we would like to gather that for people to use. And yeah, oh yeah, okay. So for interdepartmental research, I guess I just wanted to emphasize that I know that the different research that we do in this university, some of it relates to accessibility, some doesn't. But regardless of whether or not your research is explicitly related to accessibility, or even if you do research, I think that all of us as either students or staff or faculty have a really great opportunity to be able to contribute to collaborations that address these needs. And actually, I'm kind of happy to be able to continue research on the navigation app this summer in University of Washington, which is kind of funny actually, because I was supposed to be in a different place, but the summer housing was not accessible, so they moved me to a totally different university. So, and and finally, department awareness. I guess, as Eleanor has reiterated, we just want to emphasize that you guys are in a really great position of power to be able to speak into students' lives and departments' lives as to awareness of these issues and how to address them. And so as we also raise awareness, it's great for everybody to, I guess, be involved and educated in matters of inaccessibility and disability.
And now we can take any questions. We're open to talking about our experiences, and I don't know if we're going over time. Hopefully we can take a couple though, if you guys have any.
It looks like there's a question that someone put in the chat, Cheryl, and I'm not sure last name, but nonetheless, the question is, do you work with and assist students with learning differences and provide resources for students with disabilities that are graduating and looking for jobs? Is that a mission of Tar Heel at the table, or I think we have perhaps other resources on campus that do that? Oh, Christy, yeah, do you want to come up or? Oh, okay.
I can share that we do have graduates and undergraduates as part of Target. In terms of the community as a whole. In terms of the community as a whole, the students do a wonderful job of supporting each other and helping each other kind of navigate ARS. But Simon is the better one to answer that question too.
Simon, are you online and available to chime in? Okay.
Yes, yes, I am. I can confirm ARS works with students with all diagnoses, so including students with learning differences. And we also regularly facilitate contact with the careers service, colleagues in student affairs careers, to make them aware. We exchange information two-way, so if we're aware of opportunities and programs that they are running, we can push that out through our listserv community, and we can connect students connected with our office with the career service. So the answer is yes.
Thank you very much. Other questions? If not, I just want to take a minute and say, did I miss a question? No. Okay. I want to thank both of you for this presentation and for your leadership on our campus. And it is always true that our students lead us in so many different ways. And I'll look forward to the training in August. And thank you both for coming.
So at this point, I'm going to turn things over to Jill for the remainder of the meeting.
Okay, thank you all. This is Mimi's last faculty council meeting as chair of the faculty. And so we have, as we often do, a ceremonial resolution. And in keeping with the norms and customs of this body, we did not disseminate it in advance. So we need a motion to suspend the rules to consider a resolution that has not been previously presented to you. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Okay, moved by half the room. Is there a second from the other half? Thank you. Thank you very much. Without objection, I'm going to accept that motion by unanimous consent. Is there an objection? Okay, I didn't think so. All right, in that case, I would like to call on Professor Sue Estroff to present the ceremonial resolution. You do not have to have a microphone. No, we've got
The Zoom folks can.
Okay. Yes. One of my favorite things, suspending rules. What I'm about to read was proposed and composed by the FEC on behalf of all of us. And you can thank us for not sending around the many drafts and asking you for edits. So I hope you'll accept it from all of us. Whereas Professor Mimi V. Chapman has been a uniquely courageous faculty chair during difficult and unprecedented challenges for the University of North Carolina faculty, as well as for public higher education in North Carolina and beyond. Whereas, as our elected leader, the faculty chair engages in ongoing conversation with administrators, trustees, and others whose roles within the university may differ in fundamental ways from those of the faculty. She has been a consistent pillar for transparency and fairness in representing and advocating for faculty to internal and external constituents about the achievements and day-to-day work of faculty and the university community as a whole. Whereas she has consistently listened to and spoken with, for, and about us as our faculty chair, as our representative. She has defined and fulfilled her role as faculty chair with remarkable commitment, composure, and resilience in challenging circumstances, not the least of which was dealing with FEC. Whereas her embrace of Carolina's community extends to students, staff, and faculty, and alumni across the university and across titles and rank. She has been a dedicated ally and supporter of student leaders on campus, collaborating with them for greater good of our campus. She's worked tirelessly and bravely to communicate the value and merits of faculty and staff that support and improve the community, the state, the nation, and the world. Whereas she has been a clear voice of reason in defending the rigorous process of tenure and promotion when its validity was questioned and challenged, particularly regarding the appointment of Nicole Hannah-Jones. Therefore, be it resolved that the faculty of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill celebrates, thanks, and commends Chair of the Faculty, Mimi Chapman, for her courage, thoughtfulness, resolve, honesty, clarity, sense of humor, and steadfast commitment to the shared principles and values of the faculty at this university. I hereby move adoption of the resolution.
Was that a second? Okay. It's before the body then. I propose that we accept it by unanimous consent without objection. The resolution is adopted by unanimous consent. Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Mimi.
Thank you, everybody. I'll leave it at that. I promised Jill we'd get to her other stuff.
Thank you. Well, we're going to give you an opportunity to say more when we celebrate you later this semester. Okay. So next up, we have more faculty governance business. We have a whole bunch of committee reports that we're accepting this month by title. From 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of our faculty committees. Those were distributed to you in advance. And when we accept committee reports by title, there's no formal presentation, but the chairs of the committee or their designees are present if you have any questions about any of the reports that were made available for you to read. This is on the part of your agenda that's listed under committee reports by title. If you're wondering which ones I'm referring to, we are not at honorary degrees yet, but all the other ones. Does anyone have any questions about any of the non-confidential committee reports that were presented? Okay, seeing none, then again, I'm going to propose that we accept all of these reports by unanimous consent. Is there any objection to accepting the reports by unanimous consent? Okay, they are accepted. We're going to finish early. So, would you like to say more before we do that, or would you prefer not to be put on the spot? Yeah, it looks like people looked a little bit happy about finishing early. What we need to do next, we do have 2 reports from the Committee on Honorary Degrees and Special Awards. These have to be considered in closed session because they include confidential information that cannot be prematurely disclosed. So we are going to take a moment of transition. Well, first, we're going to have a motion to go into closed session to get the procedure right. But then after that motion presumably passes, we're going to ask our guests to leave the room and we're going to shut off the live stream. Just so that you will know, if you're watching on the live stream, we will not reconvene for any business except to adjourn an open session as we're required to do. So that will conclude our business for the day. So at this point, I do need a motion to go into closed session to prevent the premature disclosure of information about honorary degrees and special awards. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Okay, Beth, is there a second? Okay. Is there any objection to going into closed session by unanimous consent? Okay, hearing none, let's go through the process for closed session. I'm going to invite Kim Nichols to come forward, but we'll wait until we get assurance that the live stream is ended and that we are in closed session before we have the presentation of those reports.